Hello, everybody. We hope you had a Merry Christmas. As Dustin and I talked about what to do for this week's podcast, we decided to reframe a past podcast, one we did with professional golfer Daniel Summerhays. This week, as everybody's looking at the new year and all the things that they want to do better, sometimes we have a tendency to look at ourselves and to discover everything that's wrong with ourselves. We thought that Daniel Summerhays' interview would be a great one to listen to as a reminder to love ourselves. We hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to the Sportlight Podcast for parents, coaches, and athletes. The Sportlight refers to the time in an athlete's life when they have increased ability to affect the culture around them and the increased opportunity to learn life's lessons through sports. This podcast aims to help parents and coaches capitalize on their athletes' precious time in the Sportlight. The Sportlight Podcast is brought to you by Especially for Athletes program.
Well, everyone, we're going to start by listening to that post that we did for our Monday Motivational, and then we're going to get into talking to Daniel about that post. But just to give some context to what we're going to lead off with Daniel Summerhays, here's the post we made last Monday.
Athletes, it's Dustin. I want to talk to you really quick about a conversation I had with professional golfer Daniel Summerhays this week. Daniel taught me a lesson. He said something to me that I'd never thought before, and I've been thinking about it quite a bit since. And we're going to be doing more with Daniel over the coming months and hopefully years. But Daniel's been a professional golfer, played in some of the biggest golf tournaments in the world for the last 10 or 12 years or so. He shared this phrase with me that he reminds himself of even in golf tournaments. He has written down, he looks at it when he's playing, 2 words: love yourself. And I thought about that. I've never really given that much thought. I've given it a lot of thought since we talked about it for about an hour. And I realized how little we really focus on that. Taking care of ourselves and making sure that we're not giving so much attention to other things in our life that we forget to take care of ourselves mentally and spiritually and physically. There's 5 things I've come up with that we can do to better love ourselves and therefore be more mentally tough and strong and hopefully happier. To me, the 5 things are: first, don't compare. Second, it's let go of toxic people in our life. Third would be to give ourselves permission to make mistakes and to forgive ourselves. I think we're too hard oftentimes we're the hardest on ourselves. We'll forgive somebody else, but we won't forgive ourselves for things and mistakes we've made. I think the 4th thing is that we need to make sure we never take value in how we look, how our body looks, that we don't gather our value in how we physically look. I think we do too much of that, and that becomes a problem. And I think the last thing that we need to remember to do is to not speak negatively or think negatively about ourselves. When those negative thoughts start coming through our mind, it doesn't do us any good to speak or think negatively about ourselves. I think of all of those 5 things I just mentioned that can better help us love ourselves, the one that I think really stands out the most to me is that we forgive ourselves. We give ourselves permission to make mistakes sometimes. Know that we're going to forgive ourselves, get our eyes back up, get back to work, and try to be better the next day. I learned a lot from that short conversation with Daniel Summerhays and those 2 words, to love yourself. So that's my message for you this week. Eyes up, do the work.
So we're here with Daniel Summerhays today. Daniel is a professional golfer, has been since, I believe, 2007. Is that when you went pro, Daniel?
That's correct.
And Daniel golfed at BYU. He's been golfing professional for several years since, and we're super excited to have him on today. Daniel, thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's great to be on with you guys. I'm really excited to be here.
I wanted to hop right into a question based off of a discussion. I mean, you and I talked about a ton of things a week or 2 ago, but one of the things that you talked about, I actually did a post on our Instagram page regarding, because it struck me differently than the other things we had talked about, because I hadn't really thought of that before. And I spent a couple days thinking more about it. This idea of loving yourself. At first, when I started thinking about it, I had a hard time wrestling with my mind. Well, is that selfish? Is it, if I were to tell that to kids, would it come across as being sort of corny? loving yourself? Like, how would they, and then I had to like really think more about it. And then I did a post sort of my thoughts on that. But I think having you here to explain a little bit more about that and why that's something that is important to you, and then getting your thoughts. And I wanted to have Shad's input on that as well, as he and I dive into subjects like this all the time. So tell us more about that, Daniel, and why that is something so important to you.
Yeah, it honestly, it's probably my favorite subject to talk about, because it's something that I've had to learn and continue to learn throughout my life. And that is, it may sound a little corny, but my number one rule, and we've developed some Summerhays golf rules over the years, and they're truths that I feel like have helped me not only on the golf course, but in life. And the first rule of Summerhays golf is love yourself. And it kind of originated, there's all the positive psychology literature and all these different things, positive affirmations. And my brother, my brother Boyd Summerhays, he coaches Tony Finau on tour and a lot of high level players. And one of our rules was no negative self-talk. Because how often have you hit a bad golf shot or missed a free throw or, made an error on the field and you say, oh, I suck, or, that I'm so bad. And literally, I think all of us have fallen into that trap. I've been there. Mm-hmm. I'm not immune to that. But then you take a step back and say, okay, what did that just do for myself? Absolutely nothing. In fact, me saying that, my subconscious hears it all. It hears everything that I say to it. And so one of our rules, no negative self-talk. And then I wanted to spin it into like a positive. Instead of no negative self-talk, I was like, speak kindly to yourself, and then it formulated to this love yourself. And in fact, there's a new song, about a year and a half old. It's a song by an artist, Andy Grammer. I don't know if you guys have heard of Andy Grammer, but he's like a family favorite. Now he's probably our family's favorite artist. And he basically, every song right now that he's coming out with is like therapy in music form. And he wrote a song called Love Yourself. And it's kind of what you said. It starts out, I want to love myself without needing someone else to tell me or to show me. And he basically says, it's going to sound a little corny. This is going to be awkward, but I'm going to say it anyway. I love you. I don't say it enough. I love you. I love who you've become. Don't know how I'm going to say it unless I say it to myself. And then he said, I love myself, and so that's basically that theme. If you don't love yourself, it's impossible to truly, deeply love someone else. To give someone your full love and attention and service, to truly have your eyes up, to see other people for who they really are, you first have to love yourself. So that's why that's my Summerhays number one rule. I continually battle it because life and things, they just want to throw things at you and beat you down. But I remember a very specific time in my career, and it was only 4 or 5 years ago. And I've been trying to work on this for years and years. And I remember it was the week of the Utah Championship. It was a Korn Ferry Tour event. It was the first time I'd played in front of my home crowd, my home course, for years. And so I was pretty nervous. And I was like, man, I want to play well for my home crowd. I want to put on a good show. And another one, music's powerful for me. And The Greatest Showman's, again, that's up there. And the song was This Is Me. And it was like a remix version of it. And a line that hit me super hard was, and I know that I deserve your love. There's nothing I'm not worthy of. And I just I remember I was running on the treadmill, getting my workout in for the day. And I just started bawling, running on the treadmill. And that line, it just hit me so hard. I was like, yeah, you're right. I deserve to feel good about myself. I deserve to feel love from other people. I deserve to love myself. I deserve to, make birdie on the last hole and have a good finish. And it literally hit me like a ton of bricks. So a lot of it is loving yourself, not because you're a good golfer or you're a good athlete. Those honestly aren't the things that we should love about ourselves. We should love our core character strengths. We should love that we're curious, that we're hardworking, that we're creative, that we're compassionate. Like those are the core values and character strengths that we can love about ourselves. And when we do that, you can hit a bad golf shot and be like, that wasn't my best, but I'm still, and I say it as a joke now, but I'm still a great person, So that is the top for me. And that's why that's number one on that kind of cheat sheet that I've made that I keep with me on the golf course is love yourself. And that genuinely, once we can do that, we can have eyes up and make an impact on other people.
That's great, man. That's awesome. I appreciate you saying that. When you mentioned the negative self-talk, I thought of Tony Dungy, the old NFL coach for the Colts. He had a quote that I love that I wrote down. He said, same thing, never speak ill of yourself. And he said, what goes down in the well comes up in the bucket. In other words, what you put into your body negatively is going to come out in how you portray yourself and live your life to the world, right? And if we're being negative about ourselves all the time, it's probably going to show up on the next shot, right? In a negative way.
For sure. I love that.
As a parent, I kind of have this rule with my kids. Every now and then they start talking bad about themselves. I just ask them the question, what do you think I would say to someone if they said that about you? Like we're in a crowd of people and someone comes up and says to one of my girls, oh my gosh, you are so bad at that dance move. And I'm sitting there. I wouldn't let that happen. I'd say, what's your problem? Why are you talking to people that way? And so I tell them, I'm not going to let you talk to yourself in a way that I wouldn't let someone else talk to you. So I'm going to get you in trouble, and I'll tell my daughters, stop talking to my daughter that way. I don't want you talking to my daughter that way. I wouldn't let anyone else talk to you that way. I'm not going to let you talk that way without it being confronted. But I noticed as you were talking, Daniel, I'm sure okay with doing it to myself.
Right.
I'm sure okay. Like no one's going to talk to my daughter that way, even my daughter. But I talk crap to myself all day long. It seems like sometimes. And I love, I'm sitting here thinking through how healthy it is to do what you're talking about and to catch yourself. And I love that it's been a lifelong journey that you're still battling with. But I believe that's something that's really important.
Daniel, you said when we spoke a couple of weeks ago, you said something about it might be, the next shot's the most important. Was that what the phrase was? And I told you how in my coaching, I've had a phrase we've used at Quarterback Elite that Ty Detmer used to always share, and Kurt Warner, when they were with the Packers, they had a phrase that it was one play and clear and play the next play, both of those lines. So I'll repeat that a lot with kids I coach. And I try to do the same when I've turned that into sort of a life principle for me. One day and clear, yesterday's over. But in golf, that's tough, right? It's of all the sports, I think golf's, at least for me, Daniel, for you, for me, it's really hard to forget that I just hit 2 balls into the water and focus on the next shot. But, I'm sure in golf, you've learned how to be better at that. But how do we get a 14-year-old daughter, Shad, in your particular case, who's not, they're holding on to something, right? A mistake they made in their routine earlier today. And that's why it's still bothering them today. And they're saying, I'm so bad at that. Any advice that you've come across in your life as a professional golfer? And by the way, for people listening to this, when I say professional golfer, Daniel, was it 2016? You finished third at the PGA Championship.
Yeah.
And shot did you have the lowest score in one of the rounds?
In the U.S. Open, so that same summer, I finished tied for 8th at the U.S. Open at Oakmont, and I shot 65 in the second round, which was only 2 off the U.S. Open record, of all U.S. Opens. And then that same summer, I finished 3rd at the PGA Championship. So that was a summer to remember for sure.
And in that PGA Championship, you birdied 6 of your last 10 holes on the back 9 coming in to finish. So I want to talk to you more about that, man, because the coach in me and the competitor in me, that's clutch. When you're right there with a shot to win it, you're in 3rd place. It's winning time, right? I mean, those last 6 holes that's winning time. And some guys fold, and I just watched a replay. Sorry, Sergio Garcia, I'm throwing you under the bus here, but I was watching an old tournament. Might have been the Players Championship where Tiger Woods won it back in, I think, 13, and he and Garcia were 1, 2, and 3, and Garcia hit 2 balls in the water on 17, and then hit 1 off the tee in the water on 18. He went from tied to didn't even finish in the top 10, and Tiger Woods just casually walked up and finished par, just winning time, man. So anyway, I want to get into all that stuff later, but how do we take that idea of what you say the next shot's most important, or what I would say to a quarterback, play the next play, one play and clear, and get a young kid to understand this idea of moving on? We call it win the hour, and especially for athletes, last hour's over, time to move on.
So I think there's two ways to not play the next play, or to not hit the next shot, or make that next shot the most important. And one is ruminating and thinking about the past, and the other side is worrying about the future. I've had the fortunate and unfortunate characteristic of future anxiety. I'm pretty good at letting go of the past, because I really think that whatever my upbringing was, I couldn't change the past. So why worry about it? But at the same time, I felt like I had control over my future, which we can influence it. But man, hole 17 at Sawgrass, like you said, I was thinking about it the entire round, because you could be 5 under par, come into 17, the island green, and like Sergio, you can literally walk off with a 10, like a septuple bogey or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, I'm very familiar. Yeah. I'm very familiar with those. Way more familiar than you are, Daniel.
So in my experience, future anxiety has been debilitating sometimes for me. And whether that's in life, I'm like, okay, action A right now could throw set a chain of events that might end me up in some place, right? And that is true. But when you are in the moment, when you're playing the 4th hole at Sawgrass, you are on the 4th hole at Sawgrass. You literally can't. You're not even 217 yet. So why am I even thinking about it, right? It's taking. And so what I say now to myself, I say there is so many other things in the present moment to worry about that I have no time to think about 17. If I'm on 4 right now, I need to gather wind direction. I need to get my yardage. I need to know if it's uphill or downhill. I need to know, if you're Phil Mickelson, what the barometric pressure is at the moment. Anyway, he has a lot of other factors that go into it, but I need to know so many inputs, right? That I have no time to think about number 17. And I think that's similar to life right now. And it's a little bit, to kind of quote something from the Bible a little bit, like there's enough trouble in tomorrow, let tomorrow worry about itself. Right now, we need to worry about today's day. And there are, so many hours in a day, win the hour. Okay, what are my priorities today? And I always talk about time management as priorities management. In fact, I taught a class at Davis High that's another story for another time. But I taught a leadership course, and one of the units we did was time management. But we ended up renaming the unit to priorities management, because there's enough time in a day to do everything that we prioritize, right? So when we say, hey, I didn't have time to work out, well, switch that up. Working out wasn't a priority today, and see how that sits, right? That's a little bit tougher pill to swallow than saying I didn't have time to work out, or I didn't have time to do my homework. Homework wasn't a priority, so when you switch that to it wasn't a priority to go and help that person, then it starts to sit with you. Okay, how are my hours of the day? Am I winning this hour, this priority? What are my priorities right now? So for me, on the course, for that next shot and that priority, like, those kind of mesh together. I really think they do, because I need to worry about the first tee shot and what club I'm going to hit, the strategy, the shot shape. I need to pick my target out clearly. I need to make sure, again, the wind direction. What are the clouds doing up there? I need to throw some grass. I need to do this and that. And there's so much to consume that one moment that's really helped me to forget about the future and the anxiety for me personally that contributes to. So there are people who deal with past anxiety where they can't get over the bad shot that they just hit into the water, and it affects them for the next 3 holes. They're thinking about it. And for those people, I think a good phrase, it is what it is. Like, that happened. It's in the past. I literally cannot change the past. There's no DVR rewind button. Currently, we don't know how to get to an alternative universe where this might have actually happened in a different me or whatever, right? We don't, we got all the Marvel movies now, all these different threads and everything saying we have different timelines and everything, but we can't change it. It is what it is. And so let it go, move on to the next shot, play the next play.
Dustin, as he was talking, I thought of 2 quotes. One, Stephen Covey, the key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. Like, your schedule is a reflection of your priorities. If you look at what you do every day, no one would say video games is more important to me than my grades. Like, well, you could say that, but show me your schedule and I'll show you your priorities. I love what you were saying. Like, would we say priority instead of I don't have time to do that? When we say that's not a priority to me, it clarifies some things for us. And I love this poem. Dustin, we've read this before, but this poem came to mind while you were speaking, by Henry Van Dyke. It was a poem next to a sundial. You both have probably heard this poem. The shadow by my finger cast divides the future from the past. Before it sleeps the unborn hour, in darkness and beyond thy power. Behind its unreturning line, the vanished hour no longer thine. 1 hour alone is in thy hands, the now on which the shadow stands. And I love, Daniel, how you went both places, right? So many times we get so lost in what we've done, what's put us in a bad situation. And we just wish we spend all this time and energy. Oh, if I could just go back and do this different, hit that shot again, or make that financial decision again, or whatever it might be. We spend all this time and energy worrying about something that is so beyond our power. And like you talked about, worrying about Sawgrass 17, sometimes we look forward, we get so paralyzed by anxiety looking forward, and forward is beyond our power. But the now on which that shadow stands, if we can win the hour and put our time toward that, we'll get so much more time out of life. And I just love what you said about priorities, because man, when I start saying that, I wish I could talk to my kids more and sit down and have personal conversations with them. But instead of saying, I don't have time, saying, but it's just not a high enough priority for me to put it in my day. That just feels so wrong,
Yeah. And then it becomes a dagger. And I actually got a lot of that from that Stephen Covey book, the 7 Habits, and one of the big things too was the power of no as well in shaping your priorities. You need to be able to say no to certain things in your life that aren't a priority. But the only way to say no is to have like a bigger burning yes inside of you, that you're like, no, this is my priority. I do want to have conversations with my kids and these kind of things, or with my teammates, or with my teachers, with my parents. And so I'm going to say no to this one hangout, with my friends, or I'm going to say no to the extra hour of video games, or the extra half hour of perusing Instagram, or have a bigger yes burning inside, so you can say no to the things that really aren't a priority.
Well, the truth is we make time for things that are most important to us, right? We do. And so, I'd like your guys' thoughts on, your thought first on saying no, both of your thoughts on saying no. Because when you said that, Daniel, I went back to your negative self-talk and love yourself, that sort of thing, that, this we have to be able to say no to things. I think we often need to say no to our own thoughts. Maybe like we got to tell ourselves, stop it. No, don't. Shad, your conversation with your daughters, like, no, don't let that dog in me tell me that about myself. The old Indian or Native American chief Sitting Bull, I love this quote. He said, inside me are 2 dogs, and the one who becomes the alpha is the one that I feed the most. And there's that dog that wants to be lazy, that wants to sit on the couch and not do anything, and apathetic, and that wants the easy life. And then there's the go get it, conquer the world dog. And we have those constantly battling with us all day, right? So which one do we become? Who becomes the alpha? It's the one that we feed the most. It's the one that we entertain the most, right? And so if we entertain the one that doesn't want to do much every day, or wants to play video games, or whatever that is in your life, that's who we're going to become. And I think that ability to, as you mentioned, Danny, to say no to that dog when it's trying to eat, and say, no, I got to feed the other one because I love myself. I know what I'm capable of, and not letting past events. I love that idea of it is what it is. So, to parents out here and coaches, I think we need to be better. If our child in the car ride home wants to talk about, the mistakes they made in the game, I don't think it's a bad thing to say, well, let's learn from it. Like, what did we learn from it? But then we got to move on. Like, we can't think about it after that. Why did you miss the shot? Well, you got to go back and look at your film and see what you did, or why your hands were here or there, or why we threw the interception. But then once we understand the reason for the mistake, it's got to be, okay, it is what it is. We missed it. Tomorrow, like, we can't be thinking about this anymore. It's right. Play the next play. Let's move on, instead of letting our kids sit in it. Because when they sit in it, that then leads to, like you said, the future anxiety of, well, what am I going to do this again next time? So now I'm hesitant. Now I'm playing not to lose instead of playing to win. And that leads to tentative, unconfident, doubting yourself in the next. And now you've lost the next opportunity because of yesterday.
LeBron James, Dustin, said, you can't let a failure define you. You have to let it teach you. There's that balance, right? Like on that ride home, it's okay to learn from a failure, but don't be defined by it.
Yeah.
And there's a Kobe Bryant little excerpt as well. He was being interviewed, and he's like, failure is not even a word. Like, it doesn't exist. The only time you fail is if you don't get up Tuesday morning after having a rough Monday and not doing anything about it. And so it is. You learn from your mistakes. I always say one of the chapters of my book that someday it's out there that I want to write, one of the chapter titles is You Win or You Learn. and we learn a lot. You know, you don't win and lose. Like, you win and you learn. And we learn a lot. Like, we lose a lot. We make a lot of mistakes. That's part of it, right? And we learn a lot, but we keep continuing on, continue forward. That's part of that resilience is, and sorry, I'm getting off on a couple tangents, but when we do love ourselves and we know what character strengths we do love about ourselves, like mine, I'm a curious person. Why did I throw the interception? Why did I hit it into the water there? Is there something I could do in my training that I could improve so that I can avoid, you know, we can't always avoid it, but put the odds in my favor of not repeating that. Right. So that's that love yourself comes back into that. Oh, I love that I'm a learner. I love that I'm curious. I love that I'm a hard worker and I put in time. And then you say, oh, okay, I'll learn from this and I'll try again. So I do love that. And the next shot, as far as your thoughts and saying no to those thoughts that are debilitating, that don't serve us. I love that.
I was just going to say on that, I do a lot of leadership training in different capacities. I try to teach leaders something that you just said, but the way you said it, it applies to ourselves too. In this concept of showing love toward ourselves, I tell them, don't get critical of people, get curious. Like when something's going wrong, when you're not getting the results that you want, don't get super critical of them. You obviously aren't working hard enough. You obviously aren't doing these things that you're supposed to do. So many of us, when something's not going our way or the way that we would like, we get critical of people. And I found it's way better of a leader, one who gets curious, who goes in, coaches. Hey, let's talk about, what are you seeing? I remember Ty Detmer when he was here, Dustin, and we asked him, what made your dad such an incredible high school coach? And he would bring Ty to the side, and instead of saying, why the crap are you throwing that ball? What are you doing? What are you thinking? That's being critical. His dad would bring him to the side and he would say, what are you seeing? Why did you make that decision? That's getting curious, not critical. And I think with our self-talk, just having that mantra in our head, even when people who make serious mistakes, if they'll become curious, why did I do that? Why did I make that decision? What was going on in my mind? Instead of just attacking yourself like you're a moron, you're stupid, you're undisciplined, get curious. What's going on when I say that? When I say that to my kid that I don't want to say, when I say this to my spouse that I don't want to say, why is it that I'm lashing out as a coach? What is the emotion behind it? Instead of becoming hypercritical, become curious of yourself and learn. And then you can start addressing those root issues that might lead to things going wrong in life or a play going wrong. So curiosity is way better than being critical. I found that's an aspect of great leaders. They're curious. They're not critical of people.
I love that, Shad.
The 100 emoji right here. I could throw up there. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Well, I have a real life applicable question then to ask both of you. I had a pitching coach come out to me once in a game when I wasn't throwing well, and he came out and I was curious. You know, I thought he might be disappointed or whatever. And I'll never forget it because it was only in high school. He came out and he said, and he was kind of joking. I thought he was serious for a second. Then I realized he was joking. What did you have for breakfast today? And I thought he was being critical. Like, did you eat poison? Because you can't throw a strike. Like, what did you eat? I said, I don't know. He's like, no, serious. What's your favorite cereal? And what's your favorite cereal? And then he started telling me what cereal he liked. So I told him my cereal, and he's like, oh, wow, what kind of toast would you have with that? What kind of jam do you like? Like, we had this conversation on the pitcher's mound about favorite breakfast items. And I started smiling and laughing. And he got done. He's like, man, relax. You're good. Like, just throw a strike. You're okay. We got you. And he walked off the mound. And it like relieved me. Right. So I've taken that as a coach. There's sometimes, I just want to, hey man, is your girlfriend here at the game? Where's she at? Point her out to me. Let's go find her. Like, look up in the, just get their mind off of it. Okay. But Daniel, the reason I wanted to ask that is because I want to tie this back to a parent who's got a child who they agree with everything we're saying right now, but how do you actually get your kid to practice this? Daniel, you just hit a shot behind a tree. You've got 5 minutes to walk up to it, get your mind right, move on, talk with your caddy, regroup for it. When you're on the putting green and you just missed a 4-footer and you're still out, you got to go right back up and putt again. How do you, I can't imagine it's humanly possible to not control the internal adrenaline and just, the negative, I just missed that shot. I can't believe that, but you have to, right? You have to move on. You have to get better. You got another one. You don't want to, 5 putt. So what do you do? Is there a breathing technique? Is there a thought process? Is there something you go through? Because you have to play the next shot, but the next shot's now. You don't have 5 minutes. You have, 45 seconds. What do you do in that moment to get your body back to zone mode to make the next putt? And maybe a parent can think of that with their own child who does struggle and throw a temper and freak out or something, and they can't go down in the crowd and talk them off the ledge.
That's a great question, and it's not a simple one to answer. But I'm going to try and give probably 3 antidotes that have helped me. And the first happens off the golf course, and this again ties into everything that we've talked about. But it is the practice of mindfulness. I don't know how much you guys have talked about mindfulness or meditation on the show or in your seminars and things that you do, but essentially it is the next shot, and it's allowing your brain, basically, is if you had a river you were picturing a river and you had leaves that kind of floated by, and then you saw a pebble shimmer in the water, and then maybe a fish even came by, and then there was a branch, and then anyway, so mindfulness is like you're there in observing this stream, right? And you're like, oh wow, that's an interesting leaf, and the leaf is a thought that comes into our mind. Well, don't hit it in the water, right? Okay, that's a thought. Or, man, what would it be like if I won this afternoon? Oh, I'd love to make the game win. And that's the pebble that shimmers in the water. And then there's a branch. Anyway, the point is, mindfulness is just letting those thoughts all pass us. And then we just observe the thoughts. And it's an actual practice that you can do to stay centered, to stay in the moment, the next play, the next shot. So that's something off the course that I have incorporated, and it's helped immensely, because then if I do have it, we honestly can't control what thoughts come into our head, but we can control the energy that we give to them. So if I, miss a 4-footer and I've got the one coming back, or I've hit it behind a tree and I'm hosed, like I have no shot out, or at the green, those kind of practices of being like, oh, hey, this is just a leaf in this river. I'm going to let this thing kind of run its course and then move on. And you can get better at having it happen faster. So, for example, I remember I was pretty fired up. It was in the Provo Open this last fall down at Timpanogos Golf Course, the old East Bay, and I hit an incredible shot on this short par 4. I was 1 shot behind, or 2 shots behind the leader, and a short par 4. I hit a beautiful 3-wood. It's kind of a risk reward short par 4, and it ended up going in this back bunker, like on a down slope. Like I thought it was going to be 10 feet for eagle, and then I had basically an impossible bunker shot to get close. And I was pretty fired up. Like I was man, I just hit a perfect shot. He hit a terrible shot, got lucky. Anyway, my brain was looking at all these things floating in the river and letting it affect me. And then I hit the bunker shot out to like 12 feet. He was closer than I was for birdie now. And I'd hit 2 basically great shots. And then I remember I just kind of stood there and I collected my breath, and it was almost as if I was seeing the river and, oh, okay, interesting. These events happen. Boom, I'm right back here. And the breathing does help. And there are specific ways to breathe. The best one for me is breathing in really deep through my nose and then actually holding my breath for a few counts and then letting it out my lips. And you do a few cycles of that, and that honestly helps the heart rate come down. It kind of sparks that present moment feeling for me again. And then the third antidote, and again, this is a practice, is gratitude. How can I be grateful in this moment right now? And I've even started jotting some things down during a round, things I'm grateful for during a round. And when we play from a place of love and gratitude, we're able to move on and things don't affect us as much. I played the Korn Ferry Tour qualifying tournament this last fall. And the Korn Ferry Tour, for those who don't know, it's basically AAA baseball or G League basketball. You're one step below the big show. But I was at the qualifier, and they had signs, and it was really cool because it was everything that I've been working on. And they had signs as you drove into the clubhouse, and it said, when you're happy, you're motivated. And when you're motivated, you outperform. And I was like, amen to that, because I've worked so much on gratitude, and I actually journal quite a bit. I have an app. It's called 3 Good Things, and I journal a lot. Just, it could be the meal I ate, or the person who said hi to me, or, a conversation I had with a friend, whatever it is. And then you start scanning the world for good. You change the way your brain works, and you scan the world for good. And I like this principle because it is the eyes up. I hit a bad shot at the Memorial Tournament about 5 or 6 years ago. And I was in a bunker on a downslope, side hill lie, and there was no way I was going to make par. Instead of getting mean, nasty, like, I can't believe this ended up here or whatever, I looked at the crowd and said, hey, does anybody want to try this shot? I got nothing here. Who can? And they started laughing and kind of involved like this eyes up, like, right. And so, and it kind of just like mellowed me out too, to where I actually ended up chopping it out onto the green and made like a 20-footer for par. So I still did. I know I'm rambling on, but these are just things that I definitely want to share with this principle of staying in this moment of calming, resetting. The first tee box, I haven't hit a first tee shot where I haven't been nervous in 25 years. The nerves never stop. It's that anxiety. It's that, and there's good anxiety, and then there's I'd say there's excitement anxiety, excitement nerves, and there's the fearful nerves on the other side. And if you're not nervous, if you are nervous, it's actually a good thing, because that means adrenaline is coursing through your body, and you have the extra potential to perform at a higher level than you ever have before. So that's number one thing. But every time I walk on that first tee, in golf, they always, put on the blinders, you got to just stay tunnel focused, tunnel vision. And for me, that made me more nervous, because as the people were up in the grandstands looking at me, I was like, man, what do they think about me? Or they're going to judge. If I don't hit this tee shot good off this first tee, they're going to be judging me, and then it would like work myself up. And instead I started being eyes up, and I would literally look people in the eyes in the grandstand and just try and make like a connection with them, give them a thumbs up and whatnot. And it was like, oh my gosh, this guy's not here judging me. He's actually here because he wanted a break from work. And he's just sitting here sipping on his Sprite and enjoying watching some guys hit the golf ball better than he's ever dreamed of hitting it. Even if it goes in the trees, it's probably better than he's ever hit it, and just having that eyes up and these personal connections with the crowd literally centered me, refocused me. So those are some of those principles that have really helped me. The mindfulness, the breathing, the gratitude, and then these eyes up, and involve other people in your experience. I love watching Steph Curry and Klay Thompson play basketball. They play with joy, and they involve the crowd, and they, in their warm-ups, they're getting a kid on the bench to pass them a pass, or, it's just those kind of things that help you stay in that moment. And it gives you those senses of gratitude, of happiness, and then you can perform better than you ever thought.
Wow, Shad, there's a lot to unpack there. And we could do, I know, Daniel, we want to be sensitive to your time here. But I would like to have you back on again, because there's a lot more that we'd like to dive into with you. I was telling Shad before you hopped on, Daniel's one of these guys who gets it. He's not just a really good professional athlete. He's a guy who thinks deeper. Like, he has a real passion for a lot of what we're doing. But Daniel, thank you so much for taking time. I mean, having a professional athlete take time to get on with us and talk about all these things. Do you mind if we take 60 seconds and fire? We like to do this to call it rapid fire.
100%. I got a few minutes. We're good.
All right. We're gonna throw out a couple just random questions at you, and you've got 10 seconds to answer them. And some of these might be kind of goofy as well, Daniel. Okay. And it's not truth or dare. Like, you don't have to.
But before I do want to know what you did, what cereal you did eat for breakfast that morning. I might not have had anything the way I was pitching. I probably skipped everything of it. But if I could go back, and you know what? Now that I'm older, though, this is the good. You want to know you're getting older when you start looking at just go look at your cereal that you eat. And I go and I'm like, wow, I'm eating Raisin Bran. Raisin Bran's the top.
But there's not a character associated with the cereal you eat anymore. You're old, right?
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. I'm like,
oh, it's awesome. Cinnamon Toast Crunch would have been what I would have said to my.
I think back then you're right. Back then that would have been it. We didn't get that very often. That was a little bit. I think that was another 50 cents at the grocery store. And mom wouldn't, or my mom. But nowadays I see that stuff and I'm like, oh, I can't touch that. Give me the Raisin Bran. Give me something. Give me the oatmeal. Yeah, well, that's how you know you're like 80.
Steel cut oats.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and a hard-boiled egg. I'm good. All right. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
How many hole-in-ones have you had?
6.
How many double eagles?
1.
Interesting. Very interesting. We're tied on double eagles, so how about that?
I was there. I was there for Dustin's.
I do. The double eagle is much harder than the hole-in-one because you get 2 shots to get it. So
I had a second one with an asterisk. I hit a shot. I hit it really bad, dropped again, made it from about 250 out. So it was I guess it ended up being I counted it. All right. What's your most memorable golf shot you ever hit? Do you have one that just?
Yeah, it was a driver off the deck at the John Deere Classic. There's actually a video on YouTube somewhere of it, but it was like I hit my drive bad enough to where I didn't have an iron or like a 3-wood into the green. It was the final round. I was 1 shot back. It was actually the year Jordan Spieth won. He pulled out the bunker shot, his first win. And I hit this cut driver off this side hill line. And it was perfect because the fan, you can hear in the background in the video, he yelled out. He couldn't have put it better. He driver off the deck. is kind of how he said it. And I just peered this thing, cut it right around to this back right pin, big bunker in the front right. Hit it up there to like 20 feet and ended up making birdie to get right in a tie for the lead. So that was definitely up there with my most memorable shots.
Who's the funniest pro golfer that you've played with?
So if I could have there's a couple different foursomes that, there's kind of like your dream foursome, Tiger and this and that, but just for sheer entertainment value. And these guys are friends and they know I love them a bunch, but like I'd put like Matt Every, and these are not necessarily big names, but this is just flat out just entertainment. Matt Every, he plays super fast. He's the guy we were playing one year in a Corn Ferry event and it was super slow. And he took one of a chair from one of the volunteers and literally carried a chair with him for 4 holes, pop it right in the fairway and sit on it while he got fined for it. But, so Matt Every, Spence Levine, he's a sweetheart, but golf brings out some of the worst in us. And just to see a Spence Levine temper tantrum out there, every once in a while would be entertaining. And then I'd get Billy Horschel out there to do some of his rapid speaking commentary. And Billy's one of those guys. We were playing in a threesome at AT&T one year, and he's like, Daniel, we were playing with the other player. He's talking about the other player and said, how does someone so big and so strong like this guy, how does he hit it so short? And just says what's on his mind, right? So if I could get around with those three, that would be a pretty entertaining day.
Who's the purest swing right now on the tour?
The most impressed I've ever been during some rounds were watching Henrik Stenson in Tampa. I played the final round with Henrik Stenson. His iron play was ridiculous. I played with Rory the final round of the Players one year, and he was hitting drives and iron shots that I've never seen the ball go that way. Just so crisp, so strong, so long. And then Justin Thomas, I played with him as well several times, and just the different trajectories that he could hit his driver. Some of these drivers he hit super low and like into the wind. Then others, he teed it up and he'd launch it at 18 degrees and it's just over these big, tall pine trees, different things like that. So there's some impressive figures out there.
Your family, you have 4 kids. If you had, now I understand, was this growing up or was this recently that you guys would drive? I've done my homework on you, Daniel. You drive, by the way, everybody, Daniel and I served a mission for our church in the same mission, Santiago, Chile. Were you in the South?
I was in the West Mission, but Todd Miller was in the South Mission.
Yeah. Santiago, Chile. Anyway, so is it true that you used to drive around like an RV? The family would go from tournament to tournament. Was that your family growing up, or was that you now with your 4 kids?
Oh, that was me. No commercial driver's license needed. You buy a 45-foot motorhome and they hand you the keys and let you hop on the freeway in that baby. So yeah, we did the motorhome thing when our kids were young for 5 years. Fortunate to not ever have a wreck and was able to get around town okay in that thing. But yeah,
you sleep in any Walmart parking lots?
Walmart parking lots. That's how we did it. They said that per night, if they let a motorhome, it was like $115 on average that was spent for every motorhome that stayed in their parking lot per night. So it was good business strategy.
Makes sense. Yeah. That's cool. I like that. That's grinding, man. That's what I love. That's just grinding on the tour to make it work and taking your family with you and paying your dues. And we have some big fans of you, Daniel. I'm becoming your biggest, man. Shad, fire some questions at him.
All right. Let's just say hypothetically that there's a 5'11", 46-year-old guy who wants to get better at golf and shave 2 strokes off his game. Where could an amateur shave 2 strokes off their game if they just concentrated on on a few little things?
It'll be around the greens for sure. Your bunker play, your chipping and putting. I've got kind of a practice framework, right? We'll say this hypothetical 47-year-old, 5'11", we'll say he needs, he may or may not be named Shad, but he needs to spend 70% of his practice time from 30 yards and in. And that's a lot. And if this said Shad does ever practice, right, that's where, honestly, so if you were to spend 2 hours at the golf course, not actually on the golf course, but practicing, you'd need to spend an hour and a half ish of that time just chipping and putting. We always love to just go to the driving range and whack a bucket of balls, but that's not where you shave off your strokes. And if you watch the pros practice as well, that's where they spend almost all their time is 30 yards around the green and their putting.
Sweet. I'll make sure that hypothetical guy hears that and maybe applies it. Perfect. So one other last one, just what would you tell young people now that you look back at like when you were in high school, when we're in these kids' shoes that we talked to, if you could go back and take Danny Summerhays and help him realize how he might be able to use his position as an athlete to help more people around him, what would you go back and tell yourself to give yourself the courage to get out of your comfort zone and help people?
I've thought about that question actually a lot. What could I have taught my 16, 17-year-old self? And it would have been, honestly, I feel like if I could have really understood what my core strengths were early on in life, I feel like I would have been more able to have the eyes up a little bit more and to make an impact. Like, oh, I'm a learner. Oh, I'm a mentor. I'm a coach. I love to learn and teach. Like, those are some things that are part of me. Those are core strength. It's not, hey, I'm a great putter. Yeah, I get the ball in the hole quick, but it's because I've been so curious. It's because I've been creative. It's because I've been this thirst for new information. Like, that's why I became a good putter. Not because I was a great golfer. Those are the core strengths. And I wish little Danny would have known that sooner. And in fact, in my leadership course, I tried to help the kids do that. So we would do these character strength surveys and personality tests and things just to help them in their self-discovery. Because again, when you know who you are and what your strengths are, then you can have that influence on your platform.
Awesome.
That's great stuff, Dan. So Shad, I'm sure you agree with me. We need to try to get Daniel back on. There's a lot of stuff we could dive into. And Daniel, we're going to be talking, I think, quite a bit about a lot of things. We appreciate you and what you stand for as we love that you're a local guy. We're from Utah, live here. We love that you're a local golfer and we love to see those guys succeed. But I appreciate more what you are as a man and a leader. And I know you're helping the BYU golf team while you're off here for a second. You had a little bit of a break and you hopped into helping the high school golf team while you were figuring out you wanted to keep golfing again. And now you're back at it, which I love. I think you're going to do great things. We're cheering for you and hope to have you back on. So appreciate having Daniel on, everybody. Have a great week. Keep your eyes up. Do the work.
This has been the Sportlight Podcast from Especially for Athletes, sponsored by Coca-Cola. You can learn more about Especially for Athletes by visiting the website at especiallyforathletes.org. You can also learn more about the book, The Sportlight, by Shad Martin and Dustin Smith at especiallyforathletes.org/book.